Good evening. Tonight it's my pleasure to introduce 23-year military veteran, retired U.S. Army Green Beret, and rooftop leadership expert, Lieutenant Colonel Scott Mann. A distinguished military leader with command experience at the highest levels of the Special Operations community, Lieutenant Colonel Mann is with us today to share his expertise on leading teams through challenging circumstances and how it can be adapted from the battlefield to your farm or business. Widely recognized for leading unconventional, high-impact special operations missions all over the world, he became a master at building trust between his troops and indigenous communities as they united to solve complex problems in do-or-die environments. Lieutenant Colonel Mann is the international best-selling author of Game Changers and the co-author of Operation Pineapple Express, which tells the story of him and a group of retired Green Berets leading a daring mission to save more than 1,000 Afghan allies in the chaos of America's withdrawal from Afghanistan. He's also the founder of the Hero's Journey and Task Force Pineapple, nonprofit organizations dedicated to supporting our troops and allies in Afghanistan. Lieutenant Colonel Mann's story of purpose-driven leadership has been shared in national media outlets such as CNN, Fox, and ABC, and is soon to be depicted in a feature-length film. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Lieutenant Colonel Scott Mann.
We're definitely going to get attacked tonight. I'm in a tiny village in Sarwar, Afghanistan, and it's 107 degrees in the shade. You can feel the beads of sweat running down your neck like a leaky faucet. Now we're here to build a strategic alliance with this village, but first we're going to have to make it through the night. You see, this community, like most of Afghanistan, has been through about 40 years of nonstop war. The people in this community have seen so much violence, so much trauma, that even their children have post-traumatic stress. Everyone in the entire village has PTS. They're stuck in this, what the anthropologist Green Beret Patrick Christian calls inescapable shock. In other words, they can't move between fight and flight. It's as if they're in this churn of distraction where the least little thing pulls them off target, this churn of disengagement where they lack purpose in themselves and in their village, and this churn of disconnection, which is probably the worst. It's they don't trust each other, they don't trust their government, and they sure as hell don't trust us. Now, there's 13 of us in this dilapidated old village, this old building, this old school building. And there's Taliban fighters pretty much on every side of us within a kilometer. Exactly the way we planned it. We're surrounded on purpose. Now, I'm sure a lot of you have heard about the Navy SEALs, right? Those amazing elite commandos who took out the world's most wanted terrorist, Osama bin Laden. But how much do you know about another secret elite organization known as U.S. Army Special Forces, the Green Berets? In my travels, what I found that what most people know about the Green Berets is a movie with John Wayne by the same title, The Ballad of the Green Berets by Barry Sadler, and most recently, a movie with Green Berets on horseback played by Thor. None of these are really accurate. And I know because when I was a 14-year-old kid, I decided to become one. I grew up in a little logging town in Mount Ida, Arkansas, And one day, a Green Beret walked right out of a recruiting poster and into our soda shop where I was sitting. His uniform was pressed to perfection, and he had these big, shiny boots. Now, I was a runt of a kid, bullied pretty heavily at times, and this guy was everything I wanted to be. His name was Mark. And as cool as he looked, it was actually the mission of Special Forces that pinned me to the mat. That's what really, really hooked me. He sat down with me and he said, Scott, Green Berets are different than Navy SEALs. I mean, first of all, Navy SEALs have way better hair. But Green Berets, what they do is they work by, with, and through indigenous people. And they help them stand up on their own from the inside out. And he said, Scott, really ever since World War II, there have been these complex, ambiguous situations that have required specially trained advisors who can parachute in below the noise with just 12 guys or so, connect at exactly the right spot with precisely the right person. It might be a village elder or a tribal chief. And then what they do is they immerse themselves in the language and the culture and the environment, and they stay and they stay and they stay. And then when the time is just right and the relationship is strong enough, they help the little guy stand up against the big guy. Our motto says it all: De oppresso liber, free the oppressed. Now, the thing about Special Forces is it is a very, very complex mission, and I tell people all the time that are thinking about joining it, before you do, you need to know that like a modern day Green Beret is somewhere, he's kind of a mix between John Wick, Lawrence of Arabia, and the Verizon guy. Or the Sprint guy, or whatever they call him these days. In other words, Green Berets are relationship-based connectors who just happen to be lethal, but only when it's necessary. Now, getting into Special Forces is extremely difficult, just like all of your other commando courses, the Rangers and Delta, Marine, Recon. If this room were to try out, probably 15 or 20 would get selected. I'll let you figure out who it is. It's a grueling process that requires jumping out of a perfectly good airplane, carrying a 75-pound pack through bitter cold, oppressive heat, and then these seemingly unwinnable scenarios where you have to make a connection with someone radically different than you in 5 minutes or less, or you're out of the course. And that's just to get selected. From there, you go through a process of advanced combatives, survival, sabotage, but also advanced negotiations, cultural immersion, and language training. It's about 18 months. And after that 18 months, you are awarded, if you make it, you're awarded your Green Beret, and you are assigned to a 12-person A team. Not that one. Yeah. I'm going to move past that. I can't look at it very long. And don't let the size of the team fool you either. Back in the village of Sarwal, where we started the whole story, that little A team is doing big stuff. Captain Mike and his warrant officer are down in the village center right now, and they're meeting with the elders from 2 rival tribes. And if they can't get them to work together tonight, when that attack comes, we're going to get overrun, no doubt about it. Now, Justin is our weapons sergeant. He's the senior weapons guy, and he's hustling around right now inspecting all of the old 1900 British Enfield rifles that these farmers are carrying to make sure that they're even going to function when they squeeze the trigger. Craig is our engineer sergeant. He just sprinted down to the village center also because the well that he helped install last week just went offline. And today's not the day to lose water in this village or rapport. Now, Billy is our medical sergeant. He's our senior medical NCO. He's over here in the medical clinic with the junior medic examining 2 young boys whose grandfather just brought them in complaining of acute stomach pain. The grandfather just happens to be the most senior elder in the entire province. And Tracy is our communications sergeant. He's over here in the command hooch like a LaGuardia air traffic controller, calmly managing all of the frantic messages that are coming in about tonight's impending attack. It's just another day in the life of a Green Beret. But there's nothing casual about what goes on in this kind of work. Every decision that these teammates make can mean life or death, or loss of rapport, which is often life and death. Every move that they make is very calculated and very coordinated. It's like a symphony, a well-conducted symphony, especially tonight. When that attack comes and these teammates roll out of their cots, they don their gear, they grab their rifles, they scurry up those ladders, and they're standing shoulder to shoulder with reluctant farmers who would much rather be down below with their families. And the only reason that those farmers are up on that roof is not because the Green Berets have authority over them or because they outnumber them, but it's because of the rapport and trust that's been built day after day, night after night, when nobody's looking, month after month, year after year. And they're up there not because they have to be, but because they choose to be. And as I continued to see this throughout my tours in Afghanistan, I started calling this kind of leadership rooftop leadership, the ability to move people to take action in hard times out of choice. Now, in the morning, when the rooster crows, these teammates will roll back out of their cots and they'll hobble down to the village and they'll meet with the elders. They'll inspect damage to infrastructure from the attack the night before, and then they'll start preparing once again for another attack that's definitely going to come that night. Except this time it's going to be much harder because Tracy and Justin received life-threatening injuries last night and were medically evacuated. And they're down to 10. You know, people asked me through the years, Scott, why would you sign on to do this kind of work? Like, why would you volunteer to do that kind of work and go back over and over again to places that most of the world doesn't even care about or know about? And, you know, I have always kind of struggled with that answer. It's always been kind of hard for me to give just a straight, simple answer. Even as my oldest son is now moving down that path to do the same kind of work. And, you know, what I can tell you, though, is that there is a cost to that. It was my dream, and chasing your dream has a cost. I tell my 3 boys that all the time. There's a transaction that must be paid for every dream we chase. And for me, wearing that Green Beret had a couple of major costs. One, I said goodbye to this lady right here, my wife, Mann, who I've been married to for 27 years, 17 times in 10 years. And it was never like you saw in the movies. You know, it was always at the airfield at night with the engines running on the aircraft. And our little boys, Cody, Cooper, and Braden, hanging onto our legs, and each of us trying to figure out how to say goodbye, you know, for what might be the last time again. And I always made myself a promise that if I did make it out of that line of work, I would never miss the opportunity to tell the people in the rooms who the real hero is in our family. So please meet my wife, Monty. "23 of my friends were killed over the course of the war. Pedro Munoz, Job Price, Vic Cervantes, Tim Martin, Cliff Patterson, and 18 more. And there isn't a day that goes by that I don't think about those guys and wonder why in the hell I'm here and they're not. And honestly, I know that I'll never figure that out. But it takes me back to that question: is why do you do it? Why would you sign on to do that kind of work? And it was because of them. You know, it was because of them that I was surrounded by these amazing warriors who showed me how to read people in these faraway places that were radically different than me, and how to connect with low levels of human consciousness. And then from that place to lead people through hard times, you know, and to be relatable to people's pain, relevant to their goals. And you go in with 12 guys to this place that's radically different, and you come out with 1,200. And that always stayed with me. And even most recently, when Afghanistan collapsed in the summer of 2021, I'd been out of the Army for almost 10 years, and it was very, very, I'd put that war behind me. I'd moved on with my life. But as I watched the Taliban moving through the streets of Kabul, wearing our gear, driving our vehicles, and my friends calling me desperately from Afghanistan, begging for help. All of those things that I had learned in those moments, in those years, came back. And in a very short fashion, a group of us as veterans found ourselves on cell phones talking to each other and putting together a plan when it became apparent that there was not going to be any attempt to rescue our partners. We put together a plan and we called ourselves Task Force Pineapple. And we were one of several veteran volunteer groups. And we used our cell phones and our relationships, an open sewage canal, and a 4-foot hole in the fence to help 750 at-risk Afghans find their way to safety out of that country. And for me, it showed me in the darkest and most trying of circumstances how that kind of rooftop leadership really works. It can work in the toughest of times. And as